Welcome back to the channel and thank you for joining me today. The plan for this trip is for Scott and I to complete the Oregon BDR Route 6, cover as many miles in 10 days as possible, and enjoy the last days of summer. Since Scott is from California and I am up in Oregon, we will plan to meet at the midway point. We will meet in Brookings, Oregon for the start of this trip. From Brookings, we will head north, up Highway 101 towards Coos Bay, where we will begin BDR Route 6. The first stop will be in Sutherlin to grab some provisions and continue on the route towards the finish at Crescent Lake. From Crescent Lake, we will head back south down to 97, stopping by the scenic Crater Lake to take a few pictures, and then on down to Prospect, Oregon, where we will enjoy fishing the Rogue River. From Prospect, we will continue west through Grants Pass and on into California, where the journey will end at the small town of Gasquet. From there, Scott and I will once again split ways and make the long but scenic ride back home. Since this adventure is starting at the Oregon coast and ending at the California coast, we are dubbing this as the Coast to Coast Tour. Now let's roll that intro. I am riding a 2016 Triumph Tiger 800 XC. I bought the bike brand new in 2016 and it's been a road queen most of her life. This trip will be the first real off-road adventure and true test of this machine. The bike is mostly stock, but I have added lower crash bars, Puig touring screen, bar risers, and a mount for my GPS. For this trip, I have also installed the very large fastway pegs needed for a trip like this. For tires, Scott and I both opted for the Moto Z dual venture front tire along with the Moto Z Tractionator out back. Scott and I also opted to use some slime in the tires as an extra precaution, but mostly for peace of mind. Scott is riding a 2012 Suzuki DR 650 that he picked up used a few years back. The bike is mostly stock with a custom windscreen, large fuel tank, and a seat concepts for the longer rides to make things a bit more comfortable for the long days in the saddle. And let me tell you, Scott is no stranger and does not shy away from long days on the bike. The custom ice cooler bag on the back is not only good for holding beer and steak, it also doubles as a backrest as well. The first day of the trip will be mostly uneventful. I will be making the long but scenic trip down the 101 from Portland to Brookings, Oregon, where I will meet Scott and we will stay at Harris Beach State Park. From Portland, I headed east on Highway 18, passing through the Oregon farmland. I've heard many people say that this stretch of road can be long and boring, but I have always found it to be scenic and enjoyable, almost relaxing. If you don't enjoy the long stretches of farmland like I do, don't worry, you will quickly get to the coastal range and on over to the Pacific Ocean. Riding along the 101 can be difficult. It's challenging not to stop at every little town and all the scenic viewpoints. You must pick and choose what you want to see. I've traveled up and down the 101 many times and I still haven't seen all of it. Definitely do not miss HECETA Head Lighthouse. I couldn't have gotten a better day for the ride down. It was sunny, clear skies, and little to no wind. One of those days you feel like you could ride forever and just never stop. Eventually, I made it down to Brookings, Oregon, where I was to meet up with Scott. I made good time even with all the sightseeing and filming I had done. I still had plenty of time to set up camp and even run into town to pick up some dinner and a few drinks. That plan was slightly foiled when a local camper came over and wanted to talk about my Triumph for almost an hour, but I didn't mind. Motorcycles have a way of drawing people in. We spent the rest of the evening catching up and enjoying the anticipation of what this trip might bring. This will be our first BDR and the excitement was high. Day 2 of the trip will take us from Harris Beach State Park, north up the 101, where we will then cut over inland following the Rogue River up to the first campground we find next to the small town of Agness. The next morning we woke up at a decent hour, packed up camp, and we were then on our way. The first day of setting up and breaking down camp is the hardest, but eventually you will get into a rhythm. But wait, first, some of you may have noticed I was already off to a bad start. I managed to leave my battery bank and all my charging cables right here in camp on the electrical box. I kinda wanted those for the Oregon Backcountry. It might be hard to charge my phone without that. I've crossed this bridge many times and I've always wanted to stop, but never have. This is the Thomas Creek Bridge. It was built in 1961 by Ivan Merchant. It's the highest bridge in Oregon at 345 feet. Once we were finished playing around in the turnout, we jumped back on the 101 and continued north towards Gold's Beach. The wind had picked up considerably, and we were excited to start heading inland and up the Rogue River. It's hard to leave the scenic coast on a sunny day, but this time we didn't mind. We were more than ready for the wind to calm down a bit. NF33 ended up being one of the best roads of the trip. The road eventually turned into a windy, single-lane road course. The pavement was smooth and perfect, making for a very fun ride. Felt like we were on a supermoto track. The road eventually turned into dirt, and then the fun really started. I found out quickly I would need to turn off the traction control as it was killing the power of the 800. This would be the first of many times I would need to do this. We pulled over at the first campground we found. We did not have any reservations, so we didn't want to take any chances. Island camp was really nice, except they didn't have any pencils, so I had to improvise with this piece of charcoal. Good idea, Scott. We finished out the day relaxing and fishing the South Fork of the Coquille River. Any chance Scott and I get, we will grab the fishing poles and dip a line in the water. From Island Campground, we will pack up camp and head towards Coos Bay to make the final stop for gas and provisions before jumping on the BDR. We plan to finish the first leg of the route and make it into Sutherlin to stay the night in town. We eventually made it into the tiny town of Powers. I had planned to stop here and get breakfast, Scott and I enjoy stopping in small towns to eat, but I had a feeling this town was just a bit too small for that. We continued north and enjoyed some more amazing roads. Thankfully, we found a great place in Myrtle Point. This was the perfect stop for some food. When on a motorcycle, you have to take full advantage when pulling into a restaurant. Now's the time to get plenty of water, coffee, food, and definitely use the bathroom. This was the last stop for gas in Coos Bay. Next stop, Backcountry Discovery Route 6. This is the start of Route 6, or the end depending on which way you go. Turn on to North Bay Road from Highway 101. If you didn't know it was there, you would drive right past it without ever knowing. Route 6 starts off with pavement that flows through the Oregon farmland. We knew that the dirt roads were coming, we just didn't know when. We enjoyed the last bits of pavement while we still could. We were expecting the pavement to end and the gravel roads to start, but we did not expect a small group of cows blocking our way. We figured it would take too long to follow this group of cows all the way to Sutherlin, so we slowly made our way around and settled in on the gravel roads. I could tell it was going to take me a while to get comfortable on the big bike. The gravel wasn't too deep, but the Tiger felt a little uneasy at first. Once I stood up, the bike felt more stable and manageable. Installing the large fastway pegs ended up being the best decision I made. The stock pegs on the Tiger aren't terrible, but when standing up I was getting cramps in my ankles due to the smaller size of the stock pegs. The larger footprint of the fastway pegs allowed me to get in a more comfortable position and relax a bit more. MILLICOMA River is a good place to stop and stretch the legs for a bit. We still hadn't gotten away from all the wind, but with all the tree cover it was certainly getting better. The day was warm and the riding was good, so no complaints. I read reports online that this lower section of the route was not very scenic and not as enjoyable. I'm not sure what roads they were on, but between all the trees and viewpoints I couldn't get enough. This is what we came here for. The logging operations are fascinating to look at. It's hard to imagine that a small team of guys can come out into these remote areas and harvest these trees. The terrain is so steep and challenging, I can see why it's so dangerous. Eventually, the gravel road turns back into pavement and flows through more of Oregon's farmland. I couldn't help but be a little jealous watching the farmers ride around on their tractors and enjoy this countryside. On the surface, this looks like the best way to live. Camp Creek Road is unlike most other roads on the BDR. It is paved but appears to have had a rough life. The many potholes, broken cement, with downed trees and overgrown brush shows that this road has not been well kept. This road ended up being one of the most memorable of the trip. It is great for motorcycles and any vehicles you don't mind getting some pinstriping on, but I definitely wouldn't take a new Land Rover down it due to all the overgrown brush. If you are in a vehicle going down this road, I would highly suggest having a handsaw or axe for all the downed trees. At one point there was even a massive boulder blocking the road. Hopefully someone has come through and cleared that out. You will know you are getting close to Sutherlin as soon as you reach the Umpqua River. Even late in the summer, there was still plenty of water rushing underneath the bridge. If we had more time, it would have been nice to take a swim. The views were amazing. Shortly after leaving the river, you will return to civilization, marked with stop signs, streetlights, and traffic. We mostly looked forward to grabbing a hotel room at the Best Western. It would be the only night staying in a hotel room for the whole 9 days. This would give us a chance to repack the bikes, grab some good food, get a good night's sleep, and most importantly, shower. Overall, the hotel room was very good. It's definitely the nicest place you can stay at in Sutherlin. The parking lot felt safe for the bikes, and the breakfast was maybe the best I've ever had at a hotel. The next day, we will wake up early from the hotel room in Sutherlin and continue on the Backcountry Discovery Route 6. Next stop is Gertrude Lake, where we will spend our first night in the wilderness. Before leaving town, we will fill up our tanks at the Chevron. Things got off to a slightly rocky start as we got hassled at the gas station from some guy begging for money. He was very aggressive, and we were more than ready to get out of town and back into the woods. Once again, the road will turn from pavement and back into gravel very quickly. We had plenty of practice the day before, so we felt like seasoned veterans, and we were off to a great start. Not long up the road, we came across a 3-man team of loggers. They had the road completely blocked, but within minutes they cleared it for us. The guy driving the tractor had some serious skill swinging those logs. I could have watched that all day. I could tell right away after leaving Sutherlin. The terrain was changing and we were gaining more elevation. Getting a view like this first thing in the morning is unbeatable. I could see once again it would be hard not to stop every 5 minutes and get more pictures just like this. The road continued to change from pavement and gravel throughout the course of the day. I know the video won't do this road any justice, but some of these roads were starting to get very steep. I put the bike in first gear and crawled down them at a snail's pace. A fully loaded adventure bike can be challenging to stop on loose gravel. This could have been a real challenge with lesser tires. The further we headed east and into the Cascades, the roads got drier and much dustier. I did not anticipate such a change in the conditions, but it was cool to see how the terrain changed around every corner. We eventually made it to the small alpine lake of Gertrude. This hot summer day was well into the 90s and we were ready to cool down a bit. We even used Scott's rain tarp as a quick shade and it was truly a lifesaver. This primitive campground even came with some of its own amenities, like this rustic, handcrafted toilet. You better believe we both made sure it worked. Once again, we dug out the fishing poles and spent most of the afternoon fishing and relaxing. There was plenty of wildlife to look at, between the butterflies, massive amounts of bees, and even a few snakes. We felt fully immersed in this alpine lake. The sun slowly fell behind the trees, and we prepared for some of the best star viewing we had seen in a long time. After a long night's sleep in the backcountry, the plan was to ride from Gertrude Lake to the end of BDR Route 6 at Crescent Lake, where we would stay for 2 nights to celebrate the completion of our first BDR. We eventually made it to Reflection Lake, where the route would start to get a little more challenging. National Forestry Route 380 begins to test the skills of a rider on a bigger bike. The key here is to not stall the bike and keep your speed up just a little bit.
Not too bad.
This is some of the more challenging terrain I have done on the Tiger so far. Overall, I was very impressed how well the bike handled. The Triumph continued to plow over the terrain like the 500-pound beast it is. Scott and I were able to connect the helmet communications together so we could talk while on the route. This ended up being more useful than I first expected because he was able to relay some of the upcoming obstacles, helping me stay out of trouble on the larger bike. For instance, this little rock ledge probably would have made a nice dent in the Tiger's skid plate if I didn't know it was there. I opted to go around this obstacle instead of down it like Scott did. Overall, I would suggest you will only need basic off-road skills to complete this portion of the route. We finally made it to Summit Lake in the final stretch of road before we would make it to our destination at Crescent Lake. Little did we know that the road we were supposed to take, NF 398, would be closed due to a fire in the area. Unfortunately, the backup route, NF 60, would also be closed, forcing us to find another way around to Crescent Lake. This was the last bit of road that we needed to accomplish BDR Route 6. We were so close and yet so far away. We decided to cool off by the lake, refill our water, and plan an alternate route to Crescent Lake. At this point, I was completely unaware of the actual size of the closure and how challenging it would be to get around it. We decided the best course of action was to head south to Detroit Lake, where we could grab a bite to eat, refuel the bikes, and get out of the fire closure. Unfortunately, this would add a lot of unplanned miles to the day. In all of the rerouting and chaos, I did not grab any footage of us getting through the closure. We got stopped every few miles by park rangers and fire crews telling us we needed to leave immediately. Thankfully, they were kind enough to let us through and help get us out there as quick as possible. Making it to the restaurant felt like paradise. 2 cold beers, please. And wouldn't you know it, we saw one of the coolest Subaru BRATs I've ever seen right there in town. Making it to camp was a huge relief. This marked the completion of Backcountry Discovery Route 6. We had put down a lot of miles, not only in the dirt, but on the asphalt as well. Scott and I were both ready to relax for a few days at camp. Check out this clean 500 we found in town. Such an iconic bike. As usual, we had to check out the local watering hole, MANLEY'S Tavern. We finished off the day fishing this crystal clear stream and enjoying one of the best fires of the whole entire trip. After getting fully rested at Crescent Lake, we would leave on day 7 and make our way south past Crater Lake, stopping for lunch, and then continue down to one of our favorite spots in Prospect, Oregon to camp along the Rogue River. No matter how many times I've been to Crater Lake, I'm always impressed with how scenic this area is and just how blue that water is. The food is nothing special, but it will help you get to your next destination. It's hard to leave a view like this. Between Crater Lake and Prospect, we squeezed in as many dirt roads as possible. It was nothing too special, but better than being on the tarmac. Not too much longer after leaving Crater Lake, we made it to the River Bridge campground where we would grab a campsite. We didn't expect to see all the fishermen already down at the Rogue. Scott and I had been here a few years back, just on a pair of slightly smaller, highly capable dirt bikes. We had arrived early enough to have our pick of a campsite. Once again, we set up camp as quick as possible and hurried over to the river for what appeared to be some great trout fishing. The fishing was good, but the food was better. We headed into town to see what the local trophy room had to offer. What a way to end the day. From Prospect, we will head southwest down beyond Grants Pass and into California, where we will finish off in the very small town of Gasquet. Population 608. The day started off with crystal clear skies and smooth, twisted pavement. After being on the bike for 8 days and camping for 7, the nomadic lifestyle starts to take hold. The routine becomes easier, the long days on the bike are expected, and the body has completely settled into the lifestyle. At this point, I realize the adventure will be over soon, so I make the most out of every mile and enjoy it. Before leaving town, we just had to stop at the Fishing Hole Fly Shop. They have a little something for everyone in there. As we made our way closer to Grants Pass, we realized we were entering into another fire that was nearby. The further west we went, the smokier it became. We were now on a mission to get through town and closer to the coast in hopes things would clear up a bit. And just like that, it was as if this tunnel was separating the smoke from the blue skies. When we came out the other side, we now had hope that we had gone through the worst of it. The last day would be full of clear skies. We had now made it to Patrick Creek Camp. Scott once again put his fly rod together and we quickly made our way down the steep trail to the Smith River. The Smith River is the only undammed river in California. It spans 25 miles from the Klamath Mountain Range to the Pacific Ocean. It's truly a river to see and fish. Don't miss this. After Scott fished for a while, we closed out the night by walking to the little gym across the street, the Patrick Creek Lodge. Day 9 would be the most mileage in one day of the whole trip for me, and maybe the most mileage I have ever done in one day on the bike. Scott and I split ways and headed back home. I headed north towards Portland, and he headed south to the San Fran area. Thank you all so much for joining Scott and I on this adventure. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. As always, stay tuned for more motorcycle, e-scooter, and mountain bike adventures.